Howdy, Shasta College, Humanities 4 through Film Studies. How y'all doing? How was your weekend? Yes, it's still getting hot, but the evenings are cooling off nicely. So it is fall for sure. Hope you all enjoying the cooler weather. Um, I don't even know what week we're on, but lots of stuff to do. We're hitting a point in cinema history, which is probably the last great gasp of innovation, change, upheaval, youth market that we'll ever see. Ever. This is it, folks. And it started at about 1966. That's right, and went to about 1980. So that's what we're going to be covering for the next couple days. Um, if you're following along in the book, I think I said that I asked you guys to read chapter 7. Chapter 7 covers a lot of this. The documentary that I have posted that follows the book, the same name of the book, Story of Film, an Odyssey, but it's the documentary. You want to look at parts 8 and 9. They they're they're covering all this that I'm going to be covering now, and you'll be able to see the visuals that I can't cover as much detail as that documentary can. And I'll post this, and hopefully you guys have found that documentary on Canopy. I know it's on YouTube. Yes, you have to pay some fees for it. Sorry about that, but we are saving money by not going and gas by not driving to class. That's always the caveat to the online studies. Anyway, I used to show that documentary in class because I have a copy, but I can't do that anymore. Okay. I made a note this week for you guys to look at your journals. I hope you're keeping up with those journals. I'll post a sample of journals and announcements soon. Each journal, this class is 17 weeks long. The journal is like a diary. It lets me know you've been paying attention, what we did that week, what my lectures were, what the assignments were, and what you learned, what you got out of it. That's the reflection part. If you just list what we did, that doesn't mean anything to me without the reflection, and you won't get the full 10 points if that's what you do. You got to have a little bit of reflection, just one line or two. That's all you have to do. And these 17 entries don't need to be any longer than a paragraph. You can make them as long as you want because some people like to hand in a lot. That's fine. But there's no maximum or minimum, but you should put down what we did that week. It lets me know you were here, you're paying attention, it's part of your participation. And at the end of the 17 weeks, you'll upload it into Canvas, not now. Just save it as a file, a Word doc, or PDF, whatever. And if you don't think you need the 10 points, you probably will need it. That'll come in handy towards final grading. So keep up on your journals. And I said I'll post a sample of a journal. Okay, what it should look like. Week 1, the professor went over the syllabus. We looked at this old timey movie, this silly movie, Trip to the Moon. I thought it was a hoot. That's a reflection. I thought it was boring and horrible. That's a reflection too. Of course, it reflects on you, not so much the quality of my teaching. Anyway, so be free in your expression on those journals, but remember, this is a college academic class, and let's keep the attitude civilized, because we're civilized, right? This isn't a TikTok video, or we're not texting our friends about some cool thing we're doing, but we are texting me to prove to me that you're actually in the class and getting something out of it. Thanks. This week, we're hitting the apex of this big change that's coming to cinema. Next week, I'm going to have you watch a documentary, and there's going to be a quiz on that documentary called Easy Rider Raging Bulls. It's free. You can watch it right now if you want on YouTube. It's when the revolution of this that we're building up from the Italian neoliberalism to the 50s films, method acting, Marlon Brando, the youth market that's coming, that's very established right now. Hollywood still doesn't know how to deal with it, meaning the studio bosses are from a different generation, and they're still trying to make these old-fashioned entertainments, and the kids, the youth market, aren't going to them, and they're losing their audience to television. Then this thing comes along called drive-in movie theaters. Has anybody here been to a drive-in? They're pretty fun. There's not very many left in the whole country, but at one time there's only over 5,000 drive-ins. It's where you went, you took your family for $3 a carload, and you could eat in the car, you could sleep in the car. A lot of families take their kids; they had their pajamas on. My parents took us to a lot of drive-ins. I love the drive-in. Um, it's like being in your house, but at the drive-in. Okay, so that was a huge market to look at, and a producer, brilliant producer who's still alive, by the way. He's 92 years old, I believe. Roger Corman saw the possibilities of that market, that the youth weren't being served. They're not seeing any films they could relate to. And so he looked at what's happening in the music industry. Rock and roll was going full bore with the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, the whole bit. And but the kids aren't seeing anything they can relate to. So he started making films for those drive-in movies, as did others. American International Pictures is one of them. And Roger Corman bought all the rights to Edgar Allan Poe short stories, because the kids like horror stories, although they're rather intellectual stories. They're tongue-in-cheek. They're not they're not slasher movies with a lot of. There's no blood and guts in these things. They're kind of campy for sure, and they star a lot of times they star old-time film horror film stars from the 30s or 40s, like Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, and others, John Carradine. And young actors were in these things. You'd recognize them. Jack Nicholson, hopefully you know who that is, it made his debut in these movies. He worked on some of these movies, and got his foot in the door through the Roger Corman movies. Uh, so on another aspect, so he did what he did these low budget horror movies, and then he did biker movies. Hell's Angels was a big deal. Started in the 50s with Marlon Brando making the biker movies famous with The Wild One. And that was a big deal, revolutionary thing in America. These guys came out of World War II. They're dissatisfied with what the world looks like. And so they felt they were outcasts, outlaws in the society. They rode motorcycles, and they became an outlaw gang. Now, they became pretty vicious. They're drug dealers and rapists and maybe some killings. We don't know. But this was a popular thing to do for this certain sort of dissatisfied American who wanted to join a club of like-minded individuals. The Hells Angels were created. Other biker groups were there too, and Corman saw that the kids dug the motorcycles. They dug the fashion. They have a free spirit. They drink a lot. They take drugs. The women seem pretty loose. They always has a cute girl on the back of their bike. And so Corman saw a niche there, and so he made these biker movies. One of the most famous biker movies ever made is called Wild Angels with Peter Fonda. That's Henry Fonda's son, Bruce Dern, all these great character actors, Harry Dean Stanton, and Nancy Sinatra was the girl, Frank Sinatra's daughter. She had a big hit song with These Boots Are Made for Walking. It's really a decent movie about this biker gang trying to bury one of their friends who was killed, and how it gets out of hand with the townspeople, the rednecks. And they just want to be free, man. And then this movie came about, and it's a very, very important movie that changed everything. It's called Easy Rider. That documentary I'm going to have you guys watch is going to cover all this material. Um, I'll assign that later this week, but you could look at it now. It's called Easy Rider Raging Bulls. It's on YouTube, and it covers everything I'm covering today, but more colorful. It's actual film clips. But I'll be posting this stuff too, so you'll see it on Canvas, of course. And so Easy Rider was like the ultimate biker movie that they made for $300,000, which was considered small change by Hollywood standards. Starring Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper directed it. Terry Southern helped write the script. Laszlo Kovacs did the camera work. They all worked for very little money. They filmed it on the road from California to New Orleans. A lot of it was filmed down in New Mexico, Taos, New Mexico. And it's about two guys who do a major drug deal, um, get a bunch of money, and they're going to go to Mardi Gras to celebrate. And it's their trip through across America. And it ends badly, folks. Um, had a great soundtrack. It's the first time as a rock and roll soundtrack. Not just wasn't made for the movie. Dennis Hopper, who was editing the film, and Peter, these records came from their collection, and they literally dropped the needle. That's what they called it. But they had to get permission, but people would gladly give their music. So on that soundtrack, anything from Steppenwolf to the band to Jimi Hendrix, it's all on there. And it was resonated, reverberated with the youth market, my generation. We loved that movie. We all wanted to get bikes, motorcycles. We all wanted to hit the road, get some cool clothes, get some cool girlfriends, and go across America looking for the American dream, which isn't there, by the way. That's what they find out. But and that film was a revolution. It cannot be there. It was the Beatles of their time. The Beatles was a revolution. Maybe it's hard for you to understand that in this TikTok world we live in, but the Beatles, we never see anything like it. And they changed everything. They changed the entire social fabric of our culture. Every kid in America wanted to start a rock band, grow their hair long. And every woman in America wanted a boyfriend like that. Women weren't in bands yet, but that was coming up. They're going to get in bands sooner than later. But same thing with filmmakers. Everybody wanted to go make a biker film after they saw Easy Rider. It was that life changing, changed the culture. Other films are the same. I'll just briefly go over a couple of them here. Bonnie and Clyde, which came out in '67, was another one produced by Warren Beatty, starring Warren Beatty in a very new Faye Dunaway. Directed by Arthur Penn, about criminals. Bonnie and Clyde, the real Bonnie and Clyde, were actually real criminals in the 30s. They went on a killing and robbery spree, and it captured people's imaginations. This movie captured the youth market. We loved it. We didn't want to be murderers and killers, but they looked so cool. And they looked like they were fighting for a cause. They weren't, by the way. They're just psychopaths, the real ones. But now Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway, they just look too good doing this. And it was another film that changed everything. It is the first time we saw slow motion killings, and it looked pretty cool. Sam Peckinpah would take that to the next level in this brilliant film, The Wild Bunch, the masterwork by the brilliant Sam Peckinpah. Took slow motion death to the next degree. Now it's overdone and overused, and nobody cares. I don't believe. Another film that came out in '67, '68 was called The Graduate, directed by the brilliant Mike Nichols. He not only directed one other movie, another brilliant film he did, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, based on the great. I'm swatting these little gnats. They're all over my computer screen. He had done this great Edward Albee play called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf with Liz Taylor and Richard Burton, George Segal, Sandy Dennis, only 4 people in the whole thing, and shot in black and white. And then he did this the next year. Those are two brilliant films in 2 years. This one's in color, though. It stars a very young Dustin Hoffman. It's not his first film, but nobody knew who he was. And once again, it's about a dissatisfied youth who just graduated from college and doesn't know what to do next. He's got the Vietnam War hanging over his head. He's got to make his decisions about his future. Who can make their decisions when you're 20 years old? Nobody can, by the way. It's expected of you. Once you get through college, you better know what you want and better get to it. And it's just how he can't find what he wants, but he finds a woman, and that leads him down this primrose path, as they call it. But it ends on an ambiguous note. The ending of The Graduate doesn't end on a happy note. It looks like they're going to have each other, but then now what? So these films were life changing for a generation, and in Hollywood. Hollywood saw that the youth were just going to these films, they're going repeatedly, and they still didn't quite get how to get where this youth market, how to deal with it. And so young directors like Francis Ford Coppola, who directed Godfathers and Apocalypse Now, Steve Spielberg, who directed Jaws, and you know the rest of Steve Spielberg, George Lucas. Those are the most ambitious ones that made the huge blockbusters, but other more brilliant filmmakers like Hal Ashby and Robert Altman and Peter Bogdanovich were directing at a high caliber. They'd come out of film schools. They came out of the love for European cinema, New Wave cinema, Italian neorealism, a Kurosawa cinema. They adored this. And so their films reflected that. And the youth loved it. From about 69, say starting with Midnight Cowboy, The Wild Bunch, Last Picture Show, 5 Easy Pieces, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Badlands, MASH, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and Fabric of the Culture. Those are the filmmakers. I was still a teenager, and they made me want to go to decide what I wanted to do, which was to be a director of those kind of films. So I went to film school. My ambition was to be a director. I went to Hollywood, but by the time I got to Hollywood, things were kind of winding down for those kind of films. Star Wars was taken over. Things were changing in Hollywood in the 80s big time. But I went to Hollywood, that's right, folks, and tried to be a screenwriter and a filmmaker down there for 10 years because of these filmmakers. They're that inspiring. I thought, I want to tell my story like they paid for it. Not the billions that Spielberg and Lucas earned, but the modest sums that the other directors earned, which is a living. It's not too much to ask, is it? Maybe it was. Anyway, more on that sad story later. But these films were that important to a whole entire generation of people who came up, born mostly in the 50s and 60s, but came of age in the 70s and wanted to duplicate their heroes. These were our heroes. And it seemed like you could do it if you could just write a good script that somebody appreciated and saw. So, look at those documentaries. Try to find them. I'll try to find them and post them. It's not easy to find some of the film story documentary. I don't know why. They used to be all on there for free. Now they aren't. But I'll do my best to find chapters at 8 and 9. If you find them on Canopy, please let us know how to do it. And maybe you found them out there. But it will really help you to understand what we're trying to do in this course, and it'll help you with the quiz. That's all. I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to be going out of town for 2 days, and so I won't probably do another lecture until possibly Thursday. I know you can't wait. Which then we'll sign a paper, and we'll be talking about the quiz, which won't be till next week, but it's going to be next week. based on that documentary asking you to watch. I'll post all this. Keep up the good writings, keep up the hard work, and pay attention, close attention to the due dates. There's been a lot of confusion on when things are due. Well, it says it on the assignment. Look at the assignment, pay attention. There's no excuse for being late. You have plenty of time to do the papers and watch the movie and enjoy the movie. With that, the story of film continues. Take care.